and all other guests in attendance, including our Provincial Legal Services. Firstly, this is the Standing Committee on Community Safety and Cultural Affairs and Sport. It is Wednesday. It is now 9 o'clock, the 15th of July. I'll firstly allow members of the Standing Committee to introduce themselves in no particular order. If you are able to introduce yourselves for the record, before I ask the permanent delegate to also introduce himself. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson Lorraine Botha.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson Mesuli Kama.
Good morning, Chairperson, Member Brankes.
Members, I have not received any apologies, but with us we have our procedural officer, Mr. Wasim Matthews, as well. Do we note any other members of the committee? And if it is an alternative, if that person can just indicate who he or she is representing. Member Bosman, I see you've joined us. If you can introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good morning.
Good morning, Member Bosman. I'll now ask the permanent delegate to introduce himself.
Good morning, Chair, and to the honorable members and officials. My name is Mbulelo Isaac Sileku. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Sileku, our permanent delegate in the NCOP. I've noted Member Barnes joining us as well.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Ayanda Barnes. Morning to you and everyone listening.
Thank you so much, members. Just before we commence, in order to indicate the rules of engagement for virtual meetings, I would encourage that all members will be muted at the beginning of the meeting. That is to avoid any background noises. Also, members need to flag the chairperson's attention by communicating their request to speak or to ask questions in the MS Teams chat function. I will also encourage that all videos and audio must be switched off to improve the quality of the connection. However, if a member is speaking or a member of the an alternate or the permanent delegate is speaking or any department official, they may put on their mic and video. Participants must also then switch off their mics once they have finished speaking. I trust that you find that in order, but also please use your hand raise function within the application on MS Teams when needed. And remember to lower your hand after your point has been addressed. I trust that that is all in order. For today, we are receiving a briefing from the Department of Traditional Affairs regarding the Customary Initiation Bill. We have with us Mr. Abraham Sitole, who is to lead the presentation. I'll ask him to briefly introduce the team that is with him and himself. Over to you, Mr. Sitole.
Chairperson, thank you and good morning to members. Chair, maybe before I do that, with me is the actual leader of the delegation of administration Dr. Rinaldi Bester, who's actually the author of the bill. So he's on the line as well. He's actually the one leading us. There's Trisha Ramsume, who was part of the drafting of the bill. And there's supposed to be Danny van der Merwe as well in the meeting. So those are the colleagues that are in the Department of Traditional Affairs who will be doing or helping in the presentation. But Dr. Bester will do the introduction as a team leader, and then we'll take it from there, if you permit, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is all in order. But before I hand over to the department, I'll request if there's any comment from our permanent delegate before we commence. Honorable Seleko.
Sorry, Chair, are you talking to me?
If there's any remark or comment from you as our permanent delegate before we commence.
Oh, Chair, there is just a few. I won't even take much of your time. Chair, basically the objective of the bill is to protect, promote, and regulate initiation for this purpose, to provide acceptable norms and standards, and to provide for structures at national and provincial level with a view to ensure that initiations takes place in a controlled and safe environment. And the second one is to provide for the protection of life and the prevention of any abuse. As you have seen on the news, it becomes an excitement when a young boy goes to the school, but as soon as they leave their homes, the worry becomes by the families whether the son will come back alive or there won't be any abuse, taking place on that particular, school. And also is to provide clarity on the various responsibilities, roles, and functions of the key role players in customary initiation. You'll find that there is indeed people that has been in this sector for many years, performing the initiation themselves. But what we have seen these days, due to unemployment and poverty, there is young generation of people that wants to be the surgeons themselves without having any experience, and as a result, that actually leads to many deaths, in these initiation schools. And then as a result as well, the ones that are supposed to look after these initiates are not actually fulfilling their responsibility of making sure that nothing, happens to these boys, that whatever they should be given and whatever advice that they must be given, they are actually given. And lastly, Chair, is to make provision for effective regulation of initiation schools, because in some instances you'll find some people don't get their consent. They don't get consent from their families. You'll get a call, saying Isaac Silegu is here, after the surgeon has actually performed his duty, and then the parents will be surprised. What is there for them to do? There is nothing to do for them, unfortunately, because the work has already been performed. So they just need to hope for the best, that the boy will come back, safe, and they need to look around and make sure that all the things that he will need when he comes back are there. And Chair, basically that's what the bill that is trying to address, and to make sure that all these deaths that we are actually reading in the papers and seeing on news, it's been minimized, and these boys are taken care of, because lost lives, it's becoming an issue in the country, and we cannot, as the legislative arm of the country, allow such thing to happen. And that's what basically the bill is trying to address. It's not actually to change what is currently happening, but it's just to make sure that whatever is happening at these initiation schools and all those that have certain responsibility and roles that they need to perform, that they perform with the intent and with the purpose of making sure that there is no lives lost. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much to the permanent delegate, Honorable Isaac Saleko. We will now hand over directly to the Department of Traditional Affairs, who will be presenting and briefing us on the bill. But before I hand over, directly after comment members from the provincial official, Ms. Williams, representing Provincial Legal Services, and then we will be posing questions afterwards. To the department, Mr. Abraham Sitole, thank you for being here, Dr. Bester and all other officials. We really appreciate your attendance here today. I now hand over to you.
Chair, good morning and thank you very much for this invitation. I'm Rinaldi Bester. Good morning also to honourable members and the permanent delegate. I'm Rinaldi Bester. I'm Chief Director for Policy and Legislation in the Department of Traditional Affairs. And then Ms. Trisha Ramsumer is working with me. She's Director for Legislation. The two of us have been working for quite a number of years on firstly a policy that preceded this legislation. I think we started around 2011 with this whole process, and eventually we reached a stage where there is a bill in Parliament. And then on Minister Abraham Sitole is Chief Director in the National House of Traditional Leaders. He's the Secretary of the National House of Traditional Leaders. He's also an expert on initiation matters. As National House, they have been monitoring initiation since their existence that started in 1999, if I remember correctly, when the first National House was established. And Mr. Sitole has always been involved in his previous capacity in the Provincial House of Provincial Parliament of Mpumalanga, and then when he joined the National House. Just for record purposes, since Mr. Sitole mentioned Mr. Dani van der Merwe, we also have a departmental management meeting at the moment. So we divided ourselves and we requested Mr. van der Merwe to attend that particular meeting. So he will not be joining us in this one. Chair, I will then hand over to Mr. Sitole. He will take honourable members through the presentation. Thank you so much.
Chairperson, thank you. And thank you to Dr. Bester for the introduction. I will be taking members through the presentation, but then maybe just to comment, Honorable Silego has actually summarized the bill adequately. There was a stage when I thought he might have even presented the bill because he summarized the bill so well as to the intention. Chair, maybe just a little bit of background on the initiation. The initiation has been a very sacred, or is still a sacred practice. It's done by most communities in the Republic. And it is taken as some communities take it as a religion, whereby the young person is introduced to his ancestors, if I may call it that way. And that is where the young person will start to understand what it means to be a Sitole, and how are you expected to behave when you are a Sitole. So that is how other people perceive initiation. But as it progresses, we realize that there are many people who have not grasped the intention of initiation, and to an extent where they have, I don't want to say commercialize it, but use it wrongly for their own benefit. So as the National House, as the department, we then decided that there should be a bill that will regulate this. And therefore the initiation bill was crafted, starting with the policy and everything. Now, unfortunately, I don't know what happened. The screen now has just turned because I'm now getting into, I was still doing the introduction. If the presentation can be uploaded again, I'll appreciate it. So then the policy was indeed prepared and introduced. Now, the presentation layout as it appeared initially, this is not the correct presentation. We're going to talk about policy. Yes, that is the layout of the presentation. Policy, introduction, policy and bill, CIB objectives, CIB content, consultation, financial implications, and conclusion. This is what the presentation will focus on. Next slide. Now, introduction. Chairperson, as I indicated, customary practice has been there for many years and many decades. But unfortunately, it has been subjected to abuse by people who misunderstand what initiation is all about, to an extent where it has resulted into some deaths, injuries to initiates, and worst part, Chairperson, which we find it very difficult, amputation. Today you have a boy child, tomorrow you don't have a boy child again because he has been amputated because of carelessness of some people who operated the boy without the permission of either the parent or even running a legal initiation. Now, one of the main reasons for this unfortunate situation is the ineffective regulation of the initiation school. Although there are existing national and provincial legislation, they don't necessarily address the critical aspects of initiation. The application thereof is very limited. There is currently no national law except this bill that we're addressing the committee about now, which we believe this bill will ensure we now, with the structures that are provided in the bill, will start to strengthen the management of initiation. Next slide. Now, over the past few years, Chairperson, the Department of Traditional Affairs was involved in extensive research on initiation, very much extensive, to an extent that the first policy was produced in 2012, and Cabinet requested that there should be further research, and that further research was undertaken, and the policy was submitted to Cabinet in April 2015, and that Cabinet approved that it be gazetted for public comments, after which the refinement following the comments received from Cabinet considered the policy in August 2015 and again in April 2016 when it was approved. Cabinet also directed that the department should come up with a legislation on the basis of the approved policy. Now, the customary initiation bill was therefore drafted on the 21st June 2017. Cabinet approved the CIB to be published in the Gazette for public comments. The bill was refined on the comments received. All those protocols were observed. Next slide. And in Chairperson, in February 2018, the bill was indeed tabled in Parliament. Now, the objectives of CIB, as Honourable Member said earlier on, is to protect, promote, and regulate initiation for this purpose, provide acceptable norms and standards, and provide for the structures and at national and provincial level with a view to ensure that initiation takes place in controlled and safe environment. Remember, Chair, we said there are legislation in different provinces, but because this legislation provides different provisions, there is no uniform application or uniform management and governance of initiation. Hence, you find what in different provinces they manage it differently, and that there is no adequate involvement of different government structures and the like. So it remains a problem. To provide for the protection of life and the prevention of any abuse, to provide clarity on various responsibilities, roles, and functions of the key role players in customary initiation, and to make provision for the effective regulation of initiation. That is very critical. If initiation is not properly regulated, Chair, we're going to continue to have illegal or unregistered initiation schools that will not be accounted for, and we will have all these abuses that are taking place in those unregistered initiation schools, which will remain a problem if this initiation practice is not properly regulated. Next slide. Chapter 1, Chairperson, deals with matters relating to the interpretation and definition. The application, that is all initiates, irrespective of gender and age. Yeah, Chair, I did not mention this. Here we are covering as well female initiation. It is not all communities who have female initiation, but there are those communities that have female initiation. For instance, when you look at the Bapedi community, they have female initiation. The Basotho community have female initiation. The Venda community has female initiation. So we're as well making provisions for such, so that they are also under the protection of the legislation. And the objectives, which is the protection of life, the prohibitions, that is National Child Protection Register, National Register for Sex Offenders. Here, Chairperson, you will understand what we are saying. Children, in terms of the Children's Act, children must be protected and they are not allowed to undergo initiation. And we're saying a person who has been found to be a sex offender cannot participate in the initiation. And then we have the guiding principles which are contained in the Bill of Rights. Next slide. Chapter 2 deals with the oversight and coordinating structures. Now, Chair, as we said earlier on, there is no adequate monitoring and regulation of initiation. Though currently the National House has established a National Initiation Task Team, which National Initiation Task Team work on cooperative governance. It doesn't have a legislation that enforces its decision. It is that kind of cooperation. But here, we are then establishing a National Initiation Oversight Committee, which is NIOC, consisting of not more than 11 persons representing the following structures: the National House of Traditional Leaders, CRL Rights Commission, DTA, which is the Department of Traditional Affairs, SAPS, Department of Health, Department of Women, NPA, Interim Traditional Health Practitioners Council, and if deemed necessary, not more than 2 experts in anthropology, customary law. Now, one will ask, why then do we have experts in anthropology, custom, and customary law? It's because, Chairperson, as we said, initiation is about teaching a person of being an adult who understands custom and customary law. It is important that we have those experts who will assist in crafting and ensuring that the syllabus, if I may call it that way for lack of a better word, the syllabus at the initiation school is followed. Not that not what we see now, where in one initiation school in Gauteng was basically teaching initiates to be thugs. Instead, now we will see initiates being taught how to be a better adult and a better person. Next slide. Now, Chair, while I've mentioned those departments, they have different roles to play in ensuring that the initiation runs smooth. When you look at the various departments, they have certain roles to play, which those roles are defined in their original mandates. Now, what are the functions of this national structure that we are establishing through this bill? It's an oversight and monitoring nature. It provides guidance to provincial structures. It conducts inspection and investigation, oversee initiation awareness campaigns, and to operate an initiation hotline. Now, this is very critical, Chairperson, because at the moment, much as we have the National Initiation Task Team, it doesn't have legal power to conduct oversight. It doesn't have legal power to guide provincial structures, though it does guide them in terms of initiation guide, which we have. But that initiation guide is not mandatory. You can't say if you don't follow this, then this is what we will do. So it's just a guide, as I said earlier on. And the inspection and investigation, if there's an allegation of abuse of initiates, the National Initiation Task Team may investigate, and if it's established that it can only lay a case in the police to say there's this abuse and all of that, that is only when police could then investigate. But then the other challenge is that after the initiation has ended, you find that nobody wants to say anything to the police again on the abuse that was taking place at the initiation school. That is why then this NIOC has the SAPS members in it. It has the NPA in it, so that the arrest and prosecutions happen during the initiation season, during the initiation time, so that nobody says now that the initiation is over, I forgive those people. No, there's no forgiveness here. Other clauses contain provisions relating to the chairperson and deputy chairperson, disqualification, vacancies, meetings, and administrative and financial support. This one, chairperson, is office bearers, their responsibilities, and how can one be disqualified. You remember earlier on we spoke about a person whose name is registered in the sex offenders. Those are people who are disqualified from participating in this. Next slide. Chairperson, the provision is further made for the Provincial Initiation Coordinating Committee, which is PICS. Now, this one, remember, we have got that national structure. Now we have a provincial structure. Now, in provinces where there are provincial houses of traditional leaders, the PICS will consist of not more than 11 persons. Now here, Chairperson, will get the difference in terms of how do we establish provincial structures where there are houses of traditional leaders, where there are no houses of traditional leaders, where there are recognized traditional leaders. Here we're mentioning Wuti, in this PICS, in a province where there's a provincial house of traditional leaders, like in the Mpumalanga, like in the Eastern Cape, except but this does not apply to Western Cape, as now we're talking to Western Cape. The provincial house of traditional leaders must form part of that structure, provincial structure, provincial government, municipality, emergency services, the traditional health practitioner or the province who is a member of the interim Traditional Health Practitioners Council. This does not necessarily apply to Western Cape because currently Western Cape does not have a provincial house of traditional leaders. We believe, Wuti, once the TKLA comes into being and the recognition of the Khoisan, they will have, if there are those who are found to be in the leadership position, a house of traditional leaders will be established in Western Cape. B, in the province where there is provincial house but they are recognized traditional leaders, the PICS will consist of not more than 11 persons, the national house, the recognized traditional leaders in the province, and the persons referred to in paragraph A, and then the like above. That is those people, that is the provincial house and the like. Now they will form part of this. Now in a province where there is no provincial house, which now this one talks direct to Western Cape currently. In the province where there is no provincial house and no recognized traditional leaders, the PICC will consist of not more than 9 persons representing the National House of Traditional Leaders, and the persons represented in paragraph A, that is the provincial government, the municipality, the emergency services, and the like. That is where then the Western Cape currently falls. It may move out to A once there is a provincial house there, or it may move up to B once they are recognized traditional leaders or recognized Khoisan leaders. Next slide. Now, functions of the PICC. They are mainly to consider applications to hold initiation schools. Yes, now, this is very important function, Chairperson, because currently you find Wuti, a traditional leader in a place X will be the one who's issuing permits to hold initiation school, and those permits might not meet the actual requirements of the legislation. There might not be provisions for water. There might not be a doctor, a medical practitioner who's on standby. I'm just making an example. But a permit has been issued, and where this initiates will be staying. The structure is not a structure that is durable, that can withstand if it's winter, that will withstand the winter season. If it is summer, that will withstand the heat of the summer. So now we're having this PICC, which will have to look at all those things. Register initiation school, develop criteria and requirements for initiation school, close initiation schools, conduct investigation, conduct awareness campaign, keep a comprehensive database per initiation school, develop manuals relating to the responsibilities, duties, roles, functions of principal surgeons, caregivers, and traditional health practitioners, report abuse of initiates to subs, and register traditional surgeons. Remember, Chairperson, here we spoke about anthropologists. I just want to draw your attention to age. It must develop manuals relating to responsibilities. Now, the anthropologists are the people who knows all these things, who know what is to be done, when and how. They are the people who will provide a lot of technical support when it comes to this one. And Chair, this is very critical, so that we don't necessarily go in the initiation school raw as we are and come back more than we went in. Instead, when we go to initiation school, someone better must come in. It's just like going to school. You go to school not knowing how to write, but when you come out of school, you can write and read very well. That is the value we must get from this initiation school. That is the value that this initiation school must give to our young men. That is the value which we want to see, because at the end of the day, we want to see responsible citizens of the country. Next slide. Now, the technical support team, the PIC may establish a technical support team consisting of representatives of various departments, including provincial departments responsible for health, social development, and arts and culture, to name but a few. Why, Chairperson, this? It's because we need to get technical people who will be in a position to clarify and to help us in creating an institution that will be a legacy. Remember, we said the reason we have this is to regulate legislation, is to regulate initiation. And when we're doing that, we're bringing back the initiation that was respected years ago. Our fathers and our forefathers were able to conduct initiation schools that not even a single initiate died. Not even a single initiate was taught how to be a drug lord. Not an initiate who was taught how to pickpocket. But they were running an initiation that was teaching people to be better citizens, better men. We have serious gender abuse currently, and this is because some people have lost values. And that is what we want to bring back. This technical team will help in that. And may also co-opt persons from national department institutions such as Justice, Health, and NPA. This is for the interpretation and application of the law. If we feel there's something where we're lacking, then those people can come and assist us. Perform the functions as may be delegated to it by the PICC. Remember, the PICC is established by the minister, and the PICS, the NEOC is established by the minister. That's a national structure, and the PICC is established by the premier. So the national structure may delegate to the provincial structure any function that it deems fit, so that it is able to be executed there. Next slide. Now, these are the roles that many structures must perform. You have government that must establish NEOC and PICS, promote partnerships, control initiation schools. Now, what partnerships? Here we're talking about partnerships between national, provincial, and municipalities. Those are partnerships that must be established, and it can even be partnerships between government and traditional leaders or kingship councils, whatever that it's deemed workable. Houses of traditional leaders must promote the customary practice, develop a criteria for screening of principals and caregivers. Remember, Chairperson, we said we shall not have principals who have sex criminal offense. So such screening helps in ensuring we don't allow a person who was involved in criminal activities to be a caregiver. Traditional leaders must overall responsibility for initiation practice. Remember, traditional leaders are custodians of customs and customary practices. So they must be responsible for the overall practices within their areas of jurisdiction. And they must conduct inspection at initiation school, screening of principals. They must ensure those principals are properly screened, and that no wrong principal is given that responsibility. Principals and caregivers, they are responsible for all aspects relating to initiation schools. Now, principals and caregivers, they are there on daily basis, on hourly basis, on every minute. They are there with the initiates. They must ensure the initiates are healthy, initiates are not abused, and all of that, which is currently what is lacking. Currently, we see principals being the ones that are doing all these wrong things. Caregivers have abdicated their responsibilities. Instead, they give their responsibilities to principals, or principals give their responsibility to caregivers, or they give them to nobody. That is why we see all these challenges that we're facing now. Hence, this bill is trying to bring all that back in order. Next slide. Now, parents or legal or customary guardians decide whether initiates where he or she should attend initiation school or not. Now, in this case, a parent or a guardian must ensure that he or she takes the child to the properly registered initiation school. Now, a traditional leader must ensure that the list of registered initiation school is there, the traditional council office. And when a parent wants to know which school is ready or which school is registered, the traditional leader can open a register and say, here are the registered initiation schools that you can take your child to. And during awareness campaign, such people who have been approved to hold initiation school must be mentioned to the community so that they are aware. Has the right to attend to an initiate who falls sick, and may even remove an initiate from an initiation school under certain circumstances. Now, this is one thing that we are introducing. You know, Chair, in the actual culture, they will say, once you attend initiation school, you cannot go back home until you have completed the initiation school period. But when a person is sick, when a person is real sick, it is upon the parent to ensure that he saves that life by removing the child. What happens in Eastern Cape, and in Mpumalanga, they establish what we call bush hospitals, wherein a sick initiate will be taken to that bush hospital and be attended by qualified medical practitioners. And if it is in a hospital, they secure a ward that will strictly be for initiates. Any initiate who's not well will be removed from the initiation school and be taken to hospital. But then you find a situation wherein parents, caregivers and the like, they refuse an initiate to go to initiation to hospital because they're saying you are not strong enough and so on. That is what we are saying it should not happen. That is what we are criminalizing. You cannot have a person who's sick and say you are not strong enough. Does this person have a control over sickness? A traditional surgeon, they must be registered. They may perform circumcision as prescribed in clause 28. Now, traditional surgeon can only perform circumcision if they have a certificate to that effect. And at any given time, they must carry that qualification with them so that we can see what they are well certified, and that whenever they are performing this, there must be a qualified medical practitioner with them. Now, that leads me to medical practitioners who must be registered, must issue medical certificate in respect of initiates, may perform circumcision as prescribed in clause 28. Now here, Chair, we're saying a child who's undergoing initiation must firstly go for screening, medical screening. We must be sure what are the underlying issues with that child. We must know if that child has hypertension. We must know if that child is HIV positive and all of that, so that proper care is given to that child. So the medical practitioner must do that. They must screen these children. Even during initiation, this medical practitioner must come now and again to check if these initiates are still well. Next slide. Chairperson, SAPS and NPA, they must ensure any transgression of the law, which is abuse of initiates, deaths, initiates, kidnapping, and all of that is dealt with immediately. It must not say there is an investigation that is taking place, or investigation it will take years to complete. No, we are saying it must happen now, and the person must be arrested now, and the person must be prosecuted now, so that the 15 years that is provided in this bill is effective at that point in time. That is what will teach other people to desist from doing something that is not right with initiation. And we really need this. For instance, Chairperson, if I may digress a little bit, now this year there's a regulation that says there shall not be initiation school. But then we find in Heidelberg that there were initiation schools that were taking place, and the principal has just decided to vanish when we discovered such, and we closed the initiation school. You can see what this thing is there are those people who really don't follow the law. Even if there's coronavirus and in initiation there is no social distancing, but then you conduct initiation, you deliberately break the law, you deliberately not follow the law. So that is why SAPS and NPA are critical in this instance. Now, Chapter 4 deals with initiation schools themselves. Initiation schools must be registered if it complies with the prescribed criteria. Remember, the criteria to hold initiation school is provided for by the provincial structure. Registration is only valid for a specific initiation season. You cannot have a registration for winter initiation and say you will use it in summer. You always apply, because we need to check if your conduct during winter initiation season was up to scratch, then you must apply in summer. If your conduct was not up to scratch, you will not receive a permit to hold the initiation school. In certain instances, must obtain permission of landowner to hold initiation school on such land. Remember, initiation school can be held in private farms, just as it happens in Heidelberg, where an initiation was in private farm, and those people happened to steal a sheep there, and so on. So we managed to get that there's an initiation school after a case has been opened of a sheep that was slaughtered by the so-called initiates. Now, initiation season may not interfere or overlap with official school term. Now, Chair, we need to balance the two schools. We need to balance the customary one, and we need to balance the academic one. That is why we're saying there must be talking between these two syllabus. That is why this year we said there's not going to be initiation because at alert level 5, the minister said the winter school holidays will be very short. It will be about 2 weeks. Then we said we cannot have initiation because we need at least 3 weeks to 4 weeks to have a sound initiation. That is why we suspended it, irrespective of the COVID-19 protocols. Next slide. Clause 28 deals with consent, prohibition, and age and circumcision. Initiation is a voluntary customary practice, and no person may be forced to undergo initiation. Chair, we have put this specifically because you find that parents and family members may force a child to undergo initiation because they have undergone initiation. And we're saying, no, it's a voluntary thing. It's just like going to church. It's a voluntary thing. You attend initiation because you want to attend initiation because there's a value that you see in the initiation. Not that I must coerce somebody to attend initiation. Not that I must force that person to attend initiation because I attended the initiation. An initiate may only attend initiation school if all consent requirements have been complied with, and if such initiate is in possession of medical certificate. Now, Chair, if a person has not been pre-medically screened, that person can't attend initiation. That person, even if he presented himself at the initiation school, he cannot be circumcised, he cannot be allowed in the school until he has been pre-screened, until parents have been consulted, until we know the age of the child. If it's 18 years old, or if it's 16 and he has given consent and parents have as well given consent. That is why there we're talking of the age of 16 or 16 to 18 must consent be given by initiates and parents. But if you are 18 years and older, you give your own consent. We don't need parents to give you consent. You can even be 50 years old. You can even be 60 years old. If you want to undergo initiation, you can still do that. If you go to Kokstad, there's somebody who was about 58, undergone initiation with his last born, and he felt quite comfortable because his firstborn did attend initiation, and seemingly at home there was no peace between the one who attended initiation and the father. So the father then decided to attend initiation so that he's able to have authority over his firstborn, which he did, and apparently the family was quite happy, which is what we don't necessarily condone. But we can't say no if a person presents himself with the correct age and having met all the criteria that are required for a person to undergo initiation. Now, CIB, which is this bill, confirms provisions of Children's Act relating to genital mutilation, virginity testing, and circumcision, states that no consent in terms of Clause 28 may be in contradiction with provision of Children's Act. That is why, Chairperson, was saying if you are less than 16 years, and even if you are 16 years, there is no consent from yourself and from parents, you shall not undergo initiation because we are complying with the Children's Act. And we're saying there shall be no genital mutilation in the female initiation because that is what it is done in other countries, which I may not mention now. But there is that thing, Yoti, there's genital mutilation in the female initiation, which according to our knowledge currently in the Republic, we don't know of such. But we're saying same applies, it shall not happen. Next slide. Male circumcision to be done by a registered medical practitioner, traditional surgeon, that is, who is also a registered medical practitioner, who that traditional surgeon may operate under the supervision of a qualified medical practitioner. That's what we said earlier on, Chairperson Uti. The medical practitioner must oversee this circumcision. A person who forges any consent is guilty of an offense. Now, this is what I like most, because some initiates, Chairperson, will undergo initiation with one consent letter. They will only change them. They will TPEX nicely the name of Abraham Sitole and put in the name of Dr. Rinaldi Bester, and then make a copy, do the same, TPEX out Dr. Rinaldi Bester, put in Arnold Mkiza's name, and so on. But when you look at the permit, at the consent, is the same handwriting and all of that. That is what we are saying, this person will be guilty of an offense. Same applies to the medical certificate. People do the same. Especially this is much more prevalent in the Eastern Cape, Emampondweni. That is where you find this much more prevalent. No consent may be given by anyone for initiate to attend a non-registered initiation school. Now, a non-registered initiation school is the one that we sometimes call an illegal initiation school, because a non-registered initiation school will not meet the requirements that are put in this legislation, and we may not even know where the school is located for us to be able to go and check if they meet all the requirements. That is why we're saying you register initiation school per initiation season, and you shall not use that permit for the next initiation season. No initiate may be assaulted or abused under the guise of discipline. We're saying there are many kinds of discipline. Instead of beating up a person or bending the person under the feet, that he shall not run away and all of that. Principals must ensure that there's water and sanitation needs are catered for. Now, you can't have a initiation school without water close by. At some stage, 2 years back, if I still recall well, we had a challenge in Western Cape, wherein an initiation school was without water. We had to ask the municipality of Western Cape, of Cape Town, to help in providing a water tanker to that initiation school, because you can't have initiation school without water, and that is very critical, Chairperson. They need to bath and all of that, Chair. Principal must ensure that water and sanitation is there. Death of an initiate must immediately be reported by the principal, and investigation by SAPS must immediately take place. That is why we're saying you cannot leave a child who's sick and say, no, you shall be strong. Immediately that child passes on, if it happens that the child passes on, which we hope would, once this bill comes once this bill is enacted, it will assist in stopping that. Once that happens, that must be reported immediately, and investigation must take place immediately, not tomorrow, immediately now. Actually, the removal of that corpse must be done under the supervision of SAPS, so that we know exactly what is the cause of death of that person. Next slide. Chapter 5 deals with general matters, allowances and expenditures. Now here we're talking of New York. Offenses here, Chairperson, which I like most, 15 years imprisonment for holding non-registered initiation school. Chair, if this bill was already operational now, that principal in Heidelberg will now be facing a 15-year sentence, but the bill is still not enacted. However, the clause does not replace offenses provided for in other laws, such as Criminal Procedure Act, Children's Act, Health Professions Act, and the like. And for instance, here, when you're talking of health professions, you can't conduct, you cannot practice as a traditional surgeon if you have not been approved by a qualified medical practitioner. You will therefore be found guilty in that. Appeals against decision of New York and PICC is provided for. Regulation, monitoring of implementation of the Act by the Department of Traditional Affairs. That is what we are saying. Next slide. Provincial peculiarities. Chair, we all know that our provinces are not the same. For instance, the province of Mpumalanga is not the same as the province of Limpopo. The Western Cape is not the same as Eastern Cape, much as the majority of people in Western Cape and Eastern Cape are talking isiXhosa. but their practices may not be the same. The practice Yamampondo may not be the same as the practice Yambahlubi in Eastern Cape, in Western Cape. So therefore they are not the same. There are those peculiarities that we are making provisions for. May determine a higher minimum age for initiates, recognize instances where provincial legislation already provides for PICC, makes provisions for provinces to establish local initiation structure, which is very critical. Chairperson, we're saying PICC cannot operate alone. Instead, we're encouraging that a traditional leader, a municipality, may establish a local structure that will look at the initiation practice. For instance, in Western Cape, the Cape Town Metro Council may establish a structure of people who qualify to go and monitor initiation school. But remember, the condition here is that when you have not undergone initiation, you can't just pitch up there and claim to be monitoring initiation school. You must at least have that qualification of having attended initiation school so that you can monitor. Next slide. Since the CIB is based on the principles of the approved policy, it is important to take note of the extensive consultation that took place during the development of the policy. Here, Chair, we're just giving a background of how e-consultation took place. We're mentioning there in May and July 2016, the bill was referred for comments. National House of Traditional Leaders in turn referred to all provinces. In case of Western Cape Province, to the Office of the Director General. In the case of all other provinces, to all provincial departments, traditional health practitioners, social development. We're mentioning all the stakeholders that were consulted. The bill was referred to the 13 national departments and 4 Chapter 9 institutions. Comments were received from 5 national departments, 7 provincial departments, 1 provincial house, 1 national house, which is the only one, the NPA subs, and 1 Chapter 9 institution. These are the structures who made comments, Chairperson, on the consultation that we started in 2016. Next slide. Then in June 2017, Cabinet approved the bill to be published in the Gazette for public comment. The bill was published, the Gazette number is mentioned there, on the 14th of July, and closing date for comments was 14th of August. That was the full month. Comments were received from the following institutions: Center for Unity. All those institutions there made comments on the bill as it was published, including the Western Cape Provincial Government, the Department of the Premier. They did, Chairperson, made my inputs as well. Next slide. The majority of members envisaged in New York and PICC will be government officials. Here we're talking of public financial implications. So and Chapter 9 institution. So already those people, we will not have any expenditure in terms of officials claiming daily allowance and all of that, because they are already paid. However, there will be some expenditure in terms of members who are not drawing salary from government. But we are saying those who are drawing salary from government, they shall not receive allowances for serving in the structure. In the case of possible additional members to the New York, which may not be more than 2 persons, the minister, after consultation with the Minister of Finance, may determine allowance provided those persons are not officials or public office bearers. If you draw salary from government, you are not going to get the allowance for serving in the structure or for attending a meeting of the New York PICC and local structure, as the case may be. The DTA, which is the Department of Traditional Affairs, and respective provincial departments will have to make provisions for the travel and accommodation expenditure related to work of the members of the New York and PICC during initiation season. This is specifically for monitoring, for investigation and the like. That is where these financial implications will have a direct impact to the department and to provincial government. And we can't run away from that, because if we want to save life, this must happen. Next slide, which is almost the last one. The bill deals with matters relating to culture and traditional leaders. That is both listed in Part A of Schedule 4 of the Constitution as functional areas of concurrent national and provincial legislative competencies. The bill is needed to protect, but also regulate the customary practice of initiate uniformly across the country. The National Assembly concluded the second reading debate on the bill on 4 December 2018, Chairperson. The NCOP Select Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs received the briefing on the bill on 4 February 2020. That is this year. And Chairperson, we believe at least the NCOP will adopt the bill before the end of this year, so that if COVID-19 ends and we have a summer initiation season, we will be in a position to apply this bill and at least start to arrest and start to prosecute people who might be in contravention of this bill if it is passed before the summer season. If not, at least next year's winter season, Chairperson, we can apply this bill, because what is critical here is that we need to save life. We need to ensure that initiation school is returned to its customary nature. We cannot have a situation wherein, for instance, in Cape Town, there are people who are practicing culture and custom, but they don't know how to do it. They've just had this initiation, they've just had the circumcision, they just decide to go and practice that. It can't be correct. So it is important that this bill, Chairperson, with due respect, that we get it through so that we apply and protect life. Chairperson, thank you very much, but I request, Chairperson, with your permission, to allow Dr. Bester maybe to have a comment on the presentation, or maybe to add on something that I might not have covered. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you to Mr. Sithole. I'll now note Dr. Bester.
Chairperson and honourable members, thank you once again. I want to just mention 3 issues of importance for the committee. When this bill was discussed at the National Assembly stages, and also earlier this year, before lockdown, we managed to do 3 provincial legislature briefings, and then since lockdown, we've done a couple of virtual briefings as well. There's only one issue in this bill that has been raised by most legislatures, and as well as during the National Assembly stage. And that is the issue that Mr. Sithole referred to in clause 28 that talks about the minimum age of 16. Now, as Mr. Sithole explained, that age is in line, or that age restriction is in line with the Children's Act. There were lengthy discussions at Parliament about the possibility of changing that particular provision, but obviously this particular bill cannot go against the Children's Act. So just for interest sake, so that honourable members are aware of this fact, people have been talking to the state law advisors and to the Department of Social Development, who administers the Children's Act. Even the Portfolio Committee on COCTA at National Parliament had a discussion with their counterpart committee responsible for social development. So it may be that in future the Children's Act is amended to come down to the age that they had under discussion was the age of 12. But just to explain, because during public hearings, for example, the only real concern that people raise or comment that they had was about this age restriction of 16. But once it's explained to the public, then they understand why this bill cannot go against it. Then, Chair, also in case honourable members are not aware of it, currently the COVID-19 regulations that were published in the Gazette has a total prohibition on initiation for as long as the national state of disaster is in place. It's just not part of the bill as such, but just for the information of honourable members. So therefore, in no province, any initiation is allowed. And the case that Mr. Sithole has been referring to, those people are actually in contravention of the COVID-19 regulations. And then just one last point. In this particular bill, honourable members will see that in section 1, there's a number of definitions that refer to, for example, a traditional council as defined in the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework Act. Now, the Framework Act is our current national law dealing with traditional leadership. But in November 2019, the President assented to the new Act, the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act, or TKLA as everybody refers to it. It has not yet commenced, but we have already drafted committee amendments that we will present to the Select Committee just to change those definitions. And the way we have drafted them is that we actually drafted two sets. One for in case this Traditional Khoisan Leadership Act commences before this particular initiation bill is adopted by Parliament, and another version in case it does not commence, because we don't want to come back to Parliament in a year or two just to change definitions. So it's technical, it only concerns Clause 1 definitions, and only those definitions where there's a reference to the current Framework Act. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sithole and Dr. Bester, for the briefing and the remarks. Members, the comment from Provincial Legal Services will be deferred to a later time. The reason for this is that due to various departments that needs to be consulted directly after the briefing. I trust you find this in order. Members, I'll now take a round of questions and input or remarks. Do I see any member? By using the raise your hand function, if you have any question, comment, or a point of clarity at this time. I note Member Botha, Member Barnes, in that order, and Member Kama. Member Botha, Barnes, and then Kama.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question of clarity in what you have just said in regard to the provincial response. How will this affect the timeline in terms of the presentation that we have just had? And then in regard to the establishment of the council, I just want to understand that local government is not a role player in that council. I just want to understand why not. And then what is the provision made? What is the provisions made for whistleblowers in regard to this committee? And I just want to understand in regard to the comment around sexual offenders and the sexual offenders register. I just want to understand, is that register up to date? And the engagement between the Department of Education, how far is that engagement, or how far has that gone in regard to not overlapping the initiation season or school with the formal academic year? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Botha. Before we go over to Member Barnes, regarding your initial comment and point of clarity regarding provincial services, legal services, our permanent delegate, Honorable Isaac Seleku, will remain with us for the entire sitting, as you would be able to also provide further input on the timelines, as we have not received it directly from the NCOP as yet. But we will deal with that later in the resolutions. But I trust that the department has noted Member Botha's questions and points of clarity. I now see Member Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm kind of covered with Member Botha's question on the timeline, because my main question was that. However, I have maybe one or two comments that I would like to make. Being on the guide in the presentation, there was a matter on a guide that does not have legal powers. Just for clarity, what I would want to know, in the meantime, while this guide is not having any legal powers, what are we currently doing? And then the last one will be a comment from what Chair has said on the legal delegate that is absent. And now this is directly to the committee itself, the legislative committee. maybe we should consider also to bring in the Children's Commissioner, as we are having a Children's Commissioner here on matters like this. It's just those few comments. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Barnes. I note Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to all the members and our guests today. Let me welcome the presentation, Chair. I think as a departing note, Chair, I was listening in the presentation, and it was said that the intent of the bill, I think, is to take back the practice to what it was in the past, where there were no debts and all of that, and perhaps, Chair, being involved in many of these discussions, others even argue that. They argue contrary to, say, government's over-involvement to some extent with the practice itself, which is supposed to be sacred, performed according to one's culture, also has to some extent compromised the practice itself. Now, I want to ask Chair, I think, one or two questions. In terms of, I think I saw even in the list of where they were explaining the names, there was also an abduction. I want to check if the bill does not in any way compromise the sacredness of the practice itself, and perhaps is it not at odds with the right for persons to enjoy their culture. I'm asking this, Chair, because I know in other traditions they would take and initiate without, and it has been a practice for many generations, where they would take the initiate without him knowing, but certain people in the family, elders who have performed the custom would be aware, and then that person would be taken to the place, and that is part of how they've always practiced the tradition. It's part of the religion, for a lack of a better word. The other question I have, Chair, is around the hospital question. And criminalizing it. I want to check, wouldn't the push, perhaps maybe we say push mobile hospitals be a better option? Because at times it's not only the parent or the principal or the caregiver that does not want the child to leave and go to hospital, but the child or the initiate, let me not say the child, but the initiate might be 18 in another case, or the initiate himself might not want to go to hospital because they understand what would be the implications culturally. Because as the presenter has said, that initiations in some cultures is viewed as a process moving from a particular stage in your life to adulthood, and that would in turn even affect how you are viewed and the respect given to you because there is life after the school itself. And lastly, Chair, one question I want to ask, it was around, I think Member Potty was listening carefully, touched on the seasons and the initiation seasons and the academic school term. Now, I just want to get clarity there, Chair, because I know other people would perform. Let me make an example of an initiate that is not a school-going person, is maybe out of the school-going age or has finished the grade, even the grades, and would want to go to an initiation not in the defined seasons, whether it's summer or it's your winter, but somewhere in the middle of of the year as they've practiced in the past. Thanks. I will stop there for now.
Thank you, Member Kama. I now note Member Windvogel.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to welcome the presentation of the bill. Chair, I'm not sure if I missed the part of payments in initiation schools. I know the initiation schools ask people use huge amounts of money, especially the traditional leaders. How are you going to be regulating that? Does this bill include a minimum or maximum amount that the school are allowed to ask to do the job? That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Windvogel. From my side to Mr. Sithole, and before I go, let me see. I see Member Brankhuis. You just raised your hand, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Al-Jamaa party wants to support the initiation bill, and we want to say thank you for that beautiful presentation from Mr. Sithole. And from our side, the Al-Jamaa, we fully support this initiation bill, and let no time be wasted, and let this bill be enacted in the Constitution. And yes, that is our stance. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Brankhuis. To Dr. Bester and Mr. Sithole, thank you so much for the presentation. You've cleared up some of the questions I've had, but in terms of the bill providing financial and administrative support to the National Initiation Oversight Committee and the PICC, you mentioned if it's a government employee, they won't be compensated, but do we have a number to it? That the boards or these committees will have X amount of officials and non-officials? Because is there any link then to the PFMA in terms of financial assistance or support that would have been given? Also, there's one regarding, I was glad to hear that you were talking about the engagement with the South African Police Service. But are you able to share any further information with regard to the comments that you've received from SAPS in terms of the comments that you have made, that it will be under the supervision, that they would be investigating claims, that they will be investigating any contraventions in this act? But then also, is the regarding the school, is the obligation on the parent to ensure that the school is registered? How would we navigate that if a school is attempting to be unscrupulous in order to get initiates? Where does the burden lie on who is actually responsible to check if the school is indeed registered? That's all from my side for now. I'll hand over back to the department.
Okay, Chairperson, thank you. I will start, and Dr. Bester and Tricia may assist because there are difficult questions here that needs a doctor to respond to. I'll leave that definitely to him to respond. Chairperson, to start with, local government is involved in initiation. That's in my presentation, Chair, I said, even in Western Cape, there was a stage when we requested Western Cape Metropolitan Council to intervene by providing water services to the initiation school, because the initiation school did not have water. So that's the first intervention that is made. But local government is involved. If we look at clause 16, it does make provisions for such. Now, Chair, I'm not so 100% sure about whistleblowers, but they are not provided for. But what is critical is that the bill provides for a hotline. Now, a hotline is a line that anybody can use to report whatever situation that is not correct. If there's an initiation school, whether registered or not, and if somebody was not aware that there's an initiation school that is taking place, that person may use the hotline that shall have been established by the national structure, so that he checks if that initiation school is registered, and under who is that school registered. So that person may as well report anything that is not going right in that school without mentioning his or her name. So that is what the bill provides in terms of that. But then on the issue of sexual offenders register, that I will leave to Dr. Bester. Now on the issue of Department of Education period not overlapping, Chair, we had a number of challenges with this one. Challenges in the sense that when you go to Mpumalanga, their initiation period is 2 months, and it's a serious challenge in that score. When you go to Limpopo, their initiation period is 4 weeks, and you find in the same province there are 2 different communities, both the Ndebele and the Pedi communities, who are having 2 different winter periods. Then when you go further down to Mpumalanga, you find those who are having 4 months period. So all of these things, Chair, we are looking at them, and then we said, no, the best is to take the school calendar, because most of the initiates who attend initiation school are school-going children. It is very few of them who undergo initiation school who are outside the basic education issue. So in this case, that is why this year, for instance, Chairperson, irrespective of COVID-19 protocols, the issue of winter initiation was suspended because the Department of Education said winter holidays will be a week or 2, and therefore we can't have initiation for 2 weeks. It's not going to be practical. That is why it was then suspended this year, and hence it was adequately regulated in that regard. Now, the one honourable member asked about the legal power of the guide. Chair, as we indicated earlier on, we don't have a national legislation currently. We have a national bill, which is before the NCOP and is currently being discussed by the Western Cape Legislature or Western Cape Parliament. And this is actually the bill that will ensure the guideline that we prepared, it is adopted by the national initiation structure, which is established by this bill once it is passed into law, and then it will then have the legal power. Currently, it does not have legal power. It is a guide. It is a generic guide that says for you to have a sound initiation school, this is what you must have. And we are working with the provincial initiation committees or task teams to ensure that the guide is put into operation. It is a guide. It doesn't have legal powers because we don't have a national legislation currently. Chairperson. Then I understand that there are these comments that says government might be getting too much involved in the initiation and therefore compromising the culture. Chair, yes, people may say that, but at the same time, it is the concern of government to have initiation schools that became a death sentence to our young people. Government is concerned about initiation schools that through them amputations have taken place. Government is concerned about initiation schools that through them we find people who are normal because they've been extremely abused at the initiation school. So government is concerned about all those. And then government engage traditional leaders. And even it engage Contralesa, which Contralesa initially said, no, you cannot regulate initiation because this is our practice. But If the practice is not run properly, if the practice has changed to become a death sentence to people, it is the duty of government to intervene. And therefore, government is intervening now. And as it intervenes, the very same Contralesa has agreed to work with government on the very same issue of initiation, at least to ensure that the bill does not talk about the sacredness of the culture. Chairperson, we are not talking anything about what is happening in the culture, what is being taught in the culture, I mean, in the initiation school, how it is being taught, and then all of that. We're talking generic, we're not talking specific. For instance, even if you can want to ask me now, during my initiation, what is it that I was taught? I'm not going to tell you, Chairperson, because we are taught as people who have undergone initiation to keep secret. So the whole thing, your government, wherein they are giving you top aim and all of that, it's actually an issue of initiation. You are taught to keep secret things that you learn at the initiation school. You can't use them anywhere else except at the initiation school. That is why you have to pass that information over to the next regiment that follows you. Remember, initiation school is about regiment. Initiation school were used to form regiments so that Regiment A may go to war this time, Regiment B will stay at home, Regiment C, njalo. So the initiation school do that. We don't believe we are compromising anything in terms of this bill. When we crafted it, we were very careful because we were in consultation now and again with traditional leaders in the National House, with the Chairperson's Forum of the Provincial Houses of Traditional Leaders. We try our level best to guard against anything that may compromise the sacredness of the culture. But what we couldn't compromise is the health and the livelihood of a potential initiate. Now, hospital, bush hospital, yes, it is a better option, but bush hospital has certain limitations as well. If it is unable to assist the initiate for us to save life, that is why we have to engage. We engage with the Department of Health to make provisions, certain wards to be selected strictly for initiates, so that those initiates whom bush hospital is unable to take care of, they are taken to that ward. Yes, it is a situation that we don't necessarily like, that a potential initiate must ultimately go to hospital, and we are quite aware of the connotation and of what this attendance of hospitals will have on the person. But we have a responsibility as parents and as government that you take your child alive to initiation school. You want to get that child alive back home. You don't want to get a child who's half child coming from initiation school. Yes, I know that there's social issues that initiates might say, you went to hospital, you are not man enough to withstand the difficulties of initiation. But Chairperson, that is because people who have not lost a child as a result of initiation school will say. But if you have lost a child as a result of initiation school, that will not be said. And that will not be something that is promoted, because losing a child who's 18 years old is not a good thing at all. And that is why, Chairperson, we are saying the bush hospital, which we so much appreciate, if it cannot handle the challenges, the health challenges that are facing that initiate must go to hospital, and secured wards in hospital must be made available for the initiates. Now, the subs comments or who must ensure that the schools are registered. It is, Chairperson, it is the responsibility of the parent that he or she cannot take his or her child to an initiation school that he or she does not know. That is why we said traditional leaders as custodians of culture must keep the register of all registered initiation schools in their offices. If their offices are far, for instance, if a traditional leader has 15 villages, each and every village has a headman or a head woman. In that office, all registered initiation schools within the area of jurisdiction of that traditional leader must be kept there. And the municipality concerned, the local government of that area, must have the list of all registered initiation schools, because the applications to initiation schools will be done prior to the initiation season. And those people whom a permission might have been given, they shall be knowing at least weeks before the initiation school starts. And therefore, that list will be made available. So it is the responsibility of the parent to ensure that it doesn't take his or her child to a slaughterhouse, but take that child to a properly registered initiation school that meets all the relevant criteria. I'm going to hand over, Chairperson, with your permission. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Bester to have comments on other questions that I might not have answered. Chairperson, thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Bester.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not going to repeat what Mr. Sitole already responded to, but just quickly on Honourable Bueta's questions, the one about local government, the particular clause that's relevant to the Western Cape, that if Honourable Bueta can just make a note and then look at it later, is clause 11, subsection 3, paragraph C. The whistleblowers hotline that Mr. Sitole referred to is clause 9, subsection 1, paragraph B, Roman 5. Then the difficult question that Mr. Sitole left to me about sexual offenders. The bill refers to two particular registers. There's the National Child Protection Register, which is provided for in the Children's Act, and that is administered by the Department of Social Development. And then there's the National Register for Sex Offenders, that is referred to in the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Act of 2007. So as the Department of Traditional Affairs, we do not administer any of those or manage or control any of those registers. But the way we understand it during consultations with these two particular departments is that there's a relationship between social development and justice, so that every time when there's a court case where a person is declared as a sexual offender, for example, that information is given through to the person or the unit responsible for updating these registers. So we trust that these registers are, in fact, updated regularly. But as you see, we only refer to those registers to say that we don't have control over them, but we are just saying in the bill that no person whose name is listed in those registers may participate in any or may be involved in any way whatsoever with initiation. So such a person cannot be a principal or a caregiver, for example. Honourable Bueta also asked about the Department of Education and the school terms. Now, the Department of Education was consulted even since when we started the policy in 2011. And then important, there was traditional leadership in Daba in 2013, which former Minister Baloyi arranged on behalf of Kota. And all the parties who were involved and present at that particular Indaba, including the Department of Education, but more importantly, including the traditional leaders who were there, and there were even two or three kings that attended that meeting, they agreed that these terms cannot overlap. So obviously, the principals who envisage to have initiation schools in a particular season will have to take note of the school calendar before they finalize their season, their initiation season. Honourable Barnes, I think Mr. Sitole mentioned or responded to that. Just to say, Honourable Member, that at the moment, if there is any abduction, for example, taking place, or kidnapping, or any other kind of a criminal offence, then of course the provisions of Act like the Criminal Procedure Act will still apply, and people can still be charged in terms of those particular laws. The challenge at the moment is that initiation schools as such, we know that a lot of people talk about illegal initiation schools, but as we have said many times to the public also, is For something to be illegal, it has to be legalized some way or the other. And because there is no national legislation currently regulating initiation schools as such, it's very difficult to talk about an illegal school. SAPs, one of the honourable members also spoke about SAPs, I think it was chairperson. During consultations with SAPs, they told us this is one of their biggest challenges. They are called out to a particular initiation school. They are told the school is illegal, in inverted commas, but when they get there, they actually don't know what to charge the particular principal or caregiver or traditional surgeon, whoever is there. They don't know what to charge them with, other than maybe kidnapping or abduction. But simply because there is no legislation really talking about or regulating initiation schools as such. Honourable Kama, I think Mr. Sitole also responded to some of those questions. I just want to say about the secretness and sacredness of initiation aspects. If Honourable Member looks at clause 15, sub-clause 1, Roman paragraph 1, no, it's actually not 1, it's I, then you will see that while it is required of a principal of a school to inform the PICC of the curriculum of the school, it does not include the actual details, as Mr. Sitole also pointed out. And it specifically states that any practice or any activity that's secret and sacred does not have to be disclosed at all. However, the principal of the school must give assurance that any secret and sacred practices will not be illegal practices. For example, taking of drugs or anything like that, if that may form part of it. Then also, Honourable Kama, Mr. Sitole responded to the issue of bush hospitals, but just to point out, in clause 21, subclause 7, it states that the principal of a school must make provision for an area at that initiation school, obviously away from the public eye, but there must be an area specifically where sick children can be attended to. For example, if a child falls sick, the child must be put in that particular area, and the principal or the caregiver or the traditional surgeon who is there may then call for medical assistance. This is now in instances where it may not be possible to rush the child to a hospital, or if it may not be that serious. Honourable Windvogel asked about payment. Honourable Member, in clause 18, I'm just going there quickly, clause 18, subclause 3, it states that the minister, after consultations of course, may determine the fees to be paid. Now there's 3 kinds of fees to be paid. It's the fees to be paid by a prospective initiate to a principal for attending the school, then by the principal to the PICC for the registration of such school, and then by the parents or the legal or customary guardian for the services of a medical practitioner during initiation. For example, if a medical practitioner is requested to come and perform, in the case of male initiation, to come and perform male circumcision, then those fees can be determined. And some of these fees must obviously be determined in consultation with the Minister of Health. The whole idea here is exactly to avoid this case where people are overcharging or charging too much. We are aware of instances in one of the provinces, was reported to us, where children are abducted or kidnapped and they are taken to initiation schools. The parents don't even know that they are there. And then somebody knocks on their door and says, your child is attending initiation school, you must pay us 2,000 Rand or 1,000 Rand. And then a week later they come again. And they say, for the continued participation of your child, you need to pay another 1,000 or 2,000. So by determining the fees, standardizing the fees, you're also criminalizing it for people who are going beyond that. Then, Chairperson, your questions, let me just see. Yeah, just to put it clear that the financial and administrative support, all the members, basically all of them, of the national, the NIOC as well as the PICCs, are either government officials or public office bearers, or they are members of Chapter 9 institutions, which means they do receive salaries. So in the case of all those people, the only expenditure for both national and provincial will be the travel and subsistence if they have to go out to inspect a school, etc. Then there is also awareness campaigns that must be conducted. So that may have a financial implication depending on how much of an awareness campaign is run and how wide it is. Obviously, for a provincial PICC, it will only be run within the province. It is only in the case of the optional members at the NIOC, the National Committee, where there may be allowances applicable, and they cannot be more than 2 members. So that is not a concern for the provinces. Fortunately for provinces, it is for the National Department to pay those allowances once they have been determined for those 2 members. Yeah, I think, Chair, that covers everything. I just want to say, Trisha Ramsumer, who's also from the department and logged in, she's accessing the meeting through her phone because some of us have challenges with Teams from our department. Some of us have limited versions. She's accessing through her phone and she doesn't have the hand option to raise her hand. So I just want to ask, with your permission, Chair, if in case Trisha wants to add anything, then she can maybe do so. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bester and Mr. Sitole. Any other official want to make any comment at this time, based on any of the questions or comments that were made by members? Dr. Bester, thank you so much. Members, is there any follow-up question or further clarity that you wish to seek at this time? I see Member Kama. You may go, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think let me thank the extensiveness of the responses that we have received, and perhaps say that I appreciate the importance of saving lives, as I appreciate the rights of persons to enjoy their culture. I think what I've been raising is just my worries about unintended consequences, like in the hospital case. But I think the response has been sufficient, because the concerns with that, the serious social connotations linked to this initiation going to hospital might also lead to conflict in some communities, and possibly death that we are trying to avoid by this police. But be that as it may be, Chair, I want to now check as to where in the bill is it provided for the general public or those performing these customary initiations. Where is it provided for them to report the abuse or deviation from the said functions, whether it's on the part of the provincial or the national committees? Like I think the presentation, Mr. Sitole mentioned that you can't be going to monitor or regulate an initiation school if you have not went through the said initiation. Maybe to further that, like to say, if there's a necessary arrest that must be made, the SAPS members who will be going to the particular school to make the arrest, to ensure the secretness and sacredness of the initiation itself. Otherwise, thanks for the extensive responses. They are much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Kama. I just had one additional follow-up question regarding the registration of the surgeons. If you can just speak more to that, Mr. Sitole. I hope my question makes sense regarding that. They are registered in, are they then registered with the NIC, with the NIOC? But what about the Traditional Health Practitioners Act? If they are there registered, is that not a duplication? If you can just speak into that as well. And if there's any other member No other members, so it will be Honorable Kama's question and then just my follow-ups. Thank you. Over to the department.
Chairperson, Dr. Bester will answer these two difficult questions. Thank you.
Thank Dr. Bester. Just before you answer, I may have noted the permanent delegate's hand. Honorable Sileko, or did you have a question?
No, Chair, it was just a comment that one of the questions that was raised by some of us in the NCOP during our briefing, because we were worried about these medical practitioners coming into these schools, and we were very glad to hear that. But was what Mr. Sithole has said. But if you are if you are a medical doctor and you have not been into an initiation school, and you take your chance and you go to the school yourself, and you have never been to the school, so the chances of you coming back are limited, because what you want to do there, you must know, you must have been there before. So those are some of the concerns that the Honorable Kama is saying, because this is a very sacred practice, and there are always people that are going to be the chancers, who would want to be very inquisitive, want to know what is happening, particularly on this on the school. And they will find such instances where people, who's a doctor, but he knows he's never went to initiation school, but he would want to go and try to assist, But if you are not, if you've never been to the school and you're a doctor, we would advise you that you shouldn't go, closer to the school, because there will be consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Sileko. I now give over to Dr. Bester.
Yeah, Chairperson, maybe just before Dr. Bester, I just want to qualify the clarity given by the honourable member on the person who has not undergone initiation but who want to go there and render certain services. Chairperson, the first thing, there is a code that you must know for you to access initiation school. Even if you went to an initiation school of a Sotho origin and you want to access initiation school of the Ndebele origin, there will be a code that will be required of you to know and to say, and those people will be able to determine if you have undergone initiation or not. So chances are very slim that a person must just wake up in the morning and say, I want to go and see what is happening there. Yes, people do take those chances, and we have had a number of them who went there and came back when the initiation season ended as well, because they went there with an inquisitive idea, and they indeed found out what was done there by them being part of that school. So, Chairperson, I agree 100% with the member. It's very sacred. When you go there, you must be prepared to go there with your full heart. Thank you.
Dr. Bester, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Just to, on a lighter note, earlier today when Mr. Sithole presented, he was talking about the false consent forms, and he mentioned my name. I just want to assure members I will never falsify a form to try and get into initiation school. Chair, your question about the surgeons and the registration of the traditional surgeons, you are quite correct that this bill makes provision for it. And the reason for that, it is in clause 41, but it's an interim arrangement. And the reason for that is that currently, although the Traditional Health Practitioners Act makes provision for the registration of traditional surgeons and traditional health practitioners, it also makes provision for Traditional Health Practitioners Council. Some of those provisions have not been put in place when this bill was drafted. And we realized that to apply the provisions of this bill when it becomes law on traditional surgeons, for example, they have to be registered some way or the other. So we included them in this bill as a temporary measure with the consent of the Department of Health under clause 41 interim arrangements. But the clause also states that once that particular provisions come into full operation, this particular registration that's required with the PICC will no longer be applicable. And then, yeah, Honourable Kama, about the medical practitioners going to the schools, I think Mr. Sitole dealt with it to some extent, but also note clause 24.2 that states that a medical practitioner cannot just show up there. The medical practitioner must be invited. So if a principal invites a medical practitioner to come and perform certain tasks at the initiation school, then the intention is that that area that I spoke about earlier, that must be made available, that it will be done there. I hope that covered the additional questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bester and Mr. Sitole. Members, I gather that we have exhausted our questions and input. I don't see any further hand for comment or points of clarity. Thank you so much. On that note, allow me to thank the department, Dr. Bester, Mr. Sitole, and all other officials that were present. Thank you so much for availing yourself, and for, like Member Kama said, he mentioned that the extensiveness of the presentation, it is highly appreciated. Thank you so much. For the record, I need to note that in terms of the resolutions that the committee will be taking hereafter, I need to note that the department would be encouraged to make themselves available for any public participation process, if any. And I say again, if any, in terms of the COVID-19 regulations as well. So on that note, thank you. Thank you. We highly appreciate it, and you are now excused to the department.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, honourable members. We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to Mr. Sitole, who is sitting very far from me, so I could force him to do the presentation. But I also want to say thank you to your committee secretary, Mr. Matthews, for the arrangements and the efficiency with which it was done. It's well appreciated by us. Thank you, Chair, honourable members.
Thank you so much. Members, we still have with us our permanent delegate, Honourable Isaac Saleku. Like we stated earlier on, Provincial Legal Services will now aim to then provide their opinion and views via the public participation process. We have Wasim Matthews, our procedural officer, with us, as well as Mr. Ben Daza. We will now go straight over to our resolutions in terms of the public participation process and the next stage, but also to get input from our honourable permanent delegate regarding the timeframes. As you would be aware that in this bill there would be a negotiating mandate as well as a final mandate. So members, any comment from you at this time before I hand over to our procedural officer for any points of clarity? I see Member Botha.
Chair, thank you. I want to get back to my initial question of clarity. In regard to the stance of our provincial department, will this have an influence on the negotiating mandate timeline and the final mandate timeline?
Thank you so much, Member Botha. I see Member Daza's hand.
Thank you, Chair.
Daza, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Member Botha's question, yes, we would love the provincial department to give an input. I noticed that in the presentation of the national department, they also gave an input. Normally, their input also helps the provincial parliament in crafting its negotiating mandate. Remember, in the negotiating mandate, we must indicate whether we support the bill or we do not support the bill. But there's also a third option where we can support the bill and also propose amendments. So let me also say that the next stage now is for the committee to also decide on the public participation process. So it is very important that the committee apply its mind on this, on the public participation process. And most of our problems when it comes to legislation have come from NCOP legislation. There are a lot of eyes that are watching the public participation process of legislatures when it comes to public. So it is very important that members apply them, and considering, of course, the COVID-19. Thank you so much.
I see Member Botha.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Mr. Daza for that response. Chair, in regard to the stakeholder comments that Mr. Sitole spoke about, can we request that comments that was received so that we can also go through that as a committee? And then Mr. Daza must just, I think, guide us here in regards to where we are at in this COVID disaster period. What would be a good practice for the public hearings that we have to embark on?
Thank you so much, Member Botha. And if Member Daza, if you can also elaborate on steps taken in terms of social development and what they did in terms of their public participation process. But before you answer, may I see Member Sileku. You have input, sir?
Yeah, Chair. I think unfortunately we are in unprecedented times now in terms of public participation. And what the next step that would have followed in normal circumstances was that the provincial department would advertise, and then they will go for public participation, and there will be maybe, there will be contact. But unfortunately, times are no longer the same. So what we have done specifically in the NCOP during our own public participation, not on this particular bill per se, that what we have called, we have called for written submissions for people. We advertise and we give them a certain timeline, and whoever want to comment on a particular bill would comment. And if needs be, the province can also ask for people to have, virtual, representation, if needs be, to those that have interest in this particular bill. But also what I would advise is that also, since this bill deals specifically with initiation, I don't know how the province is going to deal with communities like Khayelitsha and in Beaufort West, where this practice is actually taking place, and with all these COVID-19 restrictions, and it's basically up to the province and to the officials to actually guide the province in terms of what would give us maximum input, so that when this bill goes, when you have to deal with terms of your mandate, whether you support or you reject the bill, that you have applied your mind and you have given all stakeholders that will be affected by this particular bill an opportunity to raise their views. And because as soon as we are done with yours, we're also going to engage on our own public participation as the NCOP. And we are going to approve our own program in terms of this particular bill before we go on our constituency week, which will be after the 4th of August. So that's all I wanted to say, Chair.
I now see Member Barnes.
Chair, Mine is actually to put emphasis on a statement that I've made earlier about the Children's Commissioner, understanding that we don't have much like previously when we did not have COVID, the public participation aspect. We are having a rare resource of having a Children's Commission, and I believe that this bill is actually addressing also children, especially when you look at the age. They say when they speak of consent, 16 years up to 18 years. So I think from our side, if we could use that resource, it will also help us also to propose within this amendment or the bill itself. I just wanted to bring that in for us to use the resource that we have to help us as a province. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Mr. Daza, is your hand still up?
No, Chair, but I think there were issues that were referred to me to advise the committee. We've also brought in Advocate Leroux to also assist the committee in terms of, this is one area that is very important, and normally that's why we would ask the legal advisors. I would be glad if you can also give him a chance to also say something in terms of public participation. But based on what Member Potter said, I can advise there are issues. There are few types of hearings that the committee can look at. Visual hearings, social development, for instance, has called for, has organized a visual hearing. And also we would advise the committee also to place an advert, and then the committee must decide which form or in which form it will take, which newspapers it will utilize, and obviously calling for written submissions. We've also provided in the advert during this COVID time to also allow people to give voice submissions, by means of a WhatsApp number that has been provided. That is also to deal with this situation. But also on the issue that has been raised by Member Barnes as well, the committee can also identify stakeholders that must or that can be invited to participate. So there is nothing wrong. So it's entirely up to the committee in which way it will conduct its public participation process. It's entirely up to the committee. So you have to tell us how would you like to do it, and then we can take it from there. But if you also want to hear from the WCPP legal advisor as well, I would appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daza. Yes, thank you so much for also being here, Mr. Leroux. Advocate, I now note you, sir. Any comment or input from you?
Chair, good morning. I don't have much to add in addition to what Mr. Daza has said. I'm sure that the committee knows by this time, while the COVID-19 lockdown regulations is a unique situation. Certainly, if the committee is of the view that this is a bill that would be of interest to the public, it certainly seems to me as though it would be. Then the committee can only be required what is practically or reasonably possible. Obviously, the committee can't go out, have in-person meetings, etc. And then on the question of what is practically and reasonably possible, maybe on that score, Mr. Daza could or has already assisted the committee with those options. In addition to, or otherwise, Chairperson, I have nothing to say.
It was good hearing your voice, sir. Thank you so much for your input. Members, with the input from Mr. Daza, and considering the fact that social development embarked on this process already, I would support a view that we follow that, but we also consider then to see how we can engage the Children's Commissioner as per Member Barnes's input. Do you have any queries or questions in that regard? But I'll firstly hand over to Wasim Matthews, who will then provide us more clarity on those steps and to provide information that it will be an ad, it will also be a special WhatsApp number, etc. Over to you, Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, everybody. Chairperson, it's basically following a template that has already been done by, I think, the Social Development Committee. just to amend the advertisement that they have, use a similar template. We do have a specific WhatsApp number that's been allocated to myself. I think each procedural officer has one, and we have the handset. So if you do have a meeting, we can receive the WhatsApp text or voice notes as well. So there is an advertisement sort of drafted in place. It will just be down to the members in terms of the dates, in terms of where they want it to be advertised in terms of the print media, but to also be cognizant of the fact that there are deadlines with different newspapers, and obviously they are public, they are distributed on different days. Some are daily, some are weekly, some are on the weekend. But generally, I think members have a good understanding of this because we've done it quite a few times already. Yeah, so that's just, and also in terms of specific stakeholders, perhaps if the departments can be asked for whatever registered organizations are with them, then that advertisement can be sent to those specific institutions. But that is down to the committee. Whatever resolution you make, if you want it to be sent to specific stakeholders, then we can do that. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any comment from you? Member Barnes, your hand is still up from earlier, or is it a new comment? I see Member Botha.
Chair, I think in regard to how we were guided now.
I see Member Botha.
Thank you, Chair. I think in regard to how we were guided now, we now then need to set the timeline and what newspapers we are going to use for the ad, and whether we are going to use the radio for the ad. I think we got the guidance now.
Thank you so much. For the sake of, we could potentially see to conclude it now, or if the committee allow, between now and Wednesday, between now and Friday afternoon, if there's any specific paper or radio station that you would want us to add, etc., then myself and the procedural officer could be attending to it, and we can then communicate via email if members are happy with that, or if you would want us to conclude now and have that discussion. Member Bosman?
Chairperson, I just wanted to find out, is it easier for us to conclude it now? And perhaps if it is, my suggestion would be that we use a regional approach. We try to get it into as many of the regional papers as possible, and we do it in each of the 3 official languages. And we definitely consider using the Vukani, for instance, as one of those. If that's helpful, Chair, we can get it done now if it works for you. We don't want to give you unnecessary work.
Thank you so much for your understanding, Member Bosman. Member Botha, your hand is still raised, or is it a new comment?
Chair, I concur with Member Bosman.
Member Barnes? Oh, sorry, Member Botha, yes?
It's fine, it's fine.
So sorry. Member Barnes?
Chair, I'm losing network, so I missed out on what we are supposed to be concluding. Can I just be accommodated as to what we are supposed to be concluding?
In terms of the process on the public participation, we have then received input from Member Bosman, and then Member Botha also supported that view. I now see Member Sileku.
Chair, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, you may go, sir.
Okay. No, Chair, what I would also like to suggest if it's possible, remember if all our municipalities also have local newspapers, and we also have a community radio station. If we can also venture into that space, it will assist the community as well in terms of comments and inputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, members. On that note, we will then engage from the regional aspect where we can get into all the regions, but we will also specifically look at specific local newspapers. I trust that you find then that in order so that we can then conclude and kickstart that process. We will then get a date from Wasim Matthews as well as Mr. Daza regarding the timeframes. I trust you find that in order then.
That's in order, Chair.
That's fine, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, members. Just before we end, remember there is a briefing regarding the recognition of customary marriages, which is tomorrow, 6 to 9 p.m. I repeat, it's 6 to 9 p.m. It was one of 2 date and times that we have received from the NCOP directly. Hence, we had to then do it at 6 tomorrow. I trust that we will see you there tomorrow. But is there any last comment that anyone would want to make? Member Botha, your hand is still up.
Apologies, Chair. It was from before.
So sorry for earlier. Also, Member Bosman.
I have no comment, Chair. I am sure you and our very capable procedural officer will get all of it done and get back to us with the plan.
On that note, thank you to Mr. Wasim Matthews for his assistance and all his hard work, Mr. Daza, Mr. LaRue for being here, to our permanent delegate, Mr. Member Isaac Saleko, thank you for your input and remarks, sir. We highly appreciate it. To all the members for being here, thank you. We will now officially conclude our meeting. Thank you so much. May you have a good day.